Hey everyone, today we're going to go over every training for every striker in Omega Strikers, and we're going to do it alphabetically. So if you guys want to mark down or skip ahead back and forth between whoever your favorite champions are, these are what we think are the best trainings right now. And keep in mind, a lot of trainings are personalized, so as long as you're using the trainings to their full potential, that's going to matter more than just playing whatever everyone else is playing. So the purpose of this video is to tell you why certain players are choosing certain trainings so that you can use it to its full potential, or you can just keep that in mind and play around it if you're facing them and just stick to whatever works best for you. But again, it's going to be alphabetical, so we're going to start off with Ai.Mi. So for Ai.Mi, the must-haves I think are Creator of Durable Things and Missile Propulsion. Creator of Durable Things is really good for stuff like her ultimate, and Missile Propulsion is really good just to get more range on all her abilities. For the next thing you would use, I personally like Ultra Scope because I like doing the long range type of stuff even more, but I see other people, they take Perfect Form and Rapid Fire, but again, this is up to preference. You could do a lot of different things. And as you guys can see, we've separated it out between forward and goalie, and this is all found on our website at osn.gg. So even if a certain striker isn't always played in a certain position, we'll have both recommendations there just in case you guys really want to just try it out. But Ai.Mi goalie is pretty viable. I actually think maybe it's kind of like a sleeper goalie moving into the future, but the must-haves I think are Eject Button and Creator of Durable Things. And then after that, if I were playing it, I'd do Missile Propulsion. I don't play her that often, but I do see other Ai.Mi goalies go for Rapid Fire. After that, let's go on to Asher. Asher must-haves right now is Unstoppable as forward, because Unstoppable is just really good on this current patch. Like, all the pro players are using it on whoever is good for it. But after that, you could pretty much choose anything you want. So it could be crossover if you like the haste after striking. Built different just makes you bigger. It just makes you a more imposing threat. Stacks on stacks is good if they can't kill you. And prime time is more for a late game build. So Asher is really good at the max level because no one can beat her in like a ping pong war if she has prime time up and fully stacked for her primary ability. After that, some niche things you could do is use Creator of Durable Things. I see this for people who really like abusing her ultimate, and Stagger Swagger is good if you are just like fighting a ton or you are getting hit by poke a lot. So if you're facing something like a Luna, it could be useful to get something like Stagger Swagger. Asher goalie, both of these are equally viable, I think, forward and goalie, but the must-haves are Built Different and Unstoppable. As a goalie, you pretty much have to have Built Different if you're a big goalie, such as like Asher, Dubu, Atlas, things like that. But after that, Acrobatics is really good if you really value movement speed and you use that to sort of do most of your goaltending needs. But again, if you can't get knocked out by the enemy team, Stacks on Stacks would be my choice there. Moving on into the next champion, we have Atlas. So we have a lot of goalies starting off in the letter A, just coincidental, I guess. But Atlas is mainly a goalie, but he could be played as a forward. He's not the best forward, but he's not bad. It's not going to be the reason why you lose. But his must-haves is Unstoppable because he's just like a big guy. Most of the big people do like Unstoppable. And then since Atlas isn't really part of the meta as a forward, the next trainings you could take are very playstyle dependent. So Built Different could be good, Stagger Swagger, Stacks on Stacks, Creator of Durable Things, Crossover. Crossover is generally just a really good forward training, and Rapid Fire at the very end. Moving on into the goalie one, this is a little more important, but it's a little more restrictive. Built Different and Unstoppable are probably the two things you must have on your Atlas goalie, and then you have a lot of different options after that. So again, it's going to depend on playstyles. If you can't get knocked out, Stacks on Stacks. If you want to play for late game, Well-Fed's really good. If they have a lot of heavy time goal scorers, maybe Creator of Durable Things could be used. And the niche ones are Creator of Large Things. If you are facing like a very brawly matchup, Extra Special could be good, so that your ultimate's up a little more often. And then Stagger Swagger if you're getting beat up a lot individually. So if your team's getting beat up, Extra Special. If you are getting beat up, Stagger Swagger. Next up, we have Drek'ar. Drek'ar is mainly a forward. He's very rare as a goalie, like super rare, but it has been done before, you know, like a broken clock is right once a day or twice a day. And as a forward, he really doesn't have that many different rune pages because there's one person, his name is It's Ignis, and he is a Drek'ar main. He is the highest ranked Drek'ar player. He is Drek'ar only, and he takes Castellas, Prime Time, and Heavy Handed, and everyone else copies him after that. And we're doing the same thing here, but I have seen a couple Drek'ars use Rapid Fire as well, but mainly just use these top three, not really too much else to say. As a goalie, Castellas would be the only mandatory one, I'd say. This is again, so he puts the debuffs on the opponents and the ball, and yeah, you just want it to last longer because that's like one of his main abilities, right? And then after that, you could do a bunch of different things on Drek'ar goalie. Eject button's really funny because you could like teleport after you stealth. Extra special sometimes is good. Build different is just a general good goalie training. And then prime time is still nice if you want to like copy the forward build, and same for heavy-handed. Onto the next build, we have Dubu. Dubu's mainly a goalie, very rarely a forward, but let's start with forward. His must-haves would be creator of large things. After that, playstyle dependent crossover. If you really like doing some cool hasty moves in the front, that could be really good to get, especially if you're like a ball hog. And then build different is nice for winning those like ping pong duels as well. The niche ones to take for Dubu forward is creator of durable things and perfect form. These are just to buff up his main abilities. As a goalie, it's a little less flexible because again, he's played a ton. I don't know if you guys have noticed the pattern yet, but if someone is really popular at a certain position, they're going to have more must-haves. And the reason why is because they've just been more perfected compared to the other training. So everyone just starts playing the same thing because they've discovered that it's the best training page for that particular champion in most cases. Obviously, there's some matchups where you take other things, but overall, creator of large things, especially on certain maps like Split, it just really blocks off the full part of the map. Built different, it's almost mandatory on goalies, and unstoppable on this patch is really good. After that, playstyle dependent ones are missile propulsion, stacks on stacks if you can't get hit, well fed for late game builds. Hot shot's pretty interesting too. Stagger swagger if you're getting beat up a lot. Crossover is pretty nice as well. And after that, the only weird one you could take is creator of durable things. I see people, they do both of these. I'm guilty of this too on some champions. It's just more of a for fun thing to do, but it is kind of funny to see. Next up, we have Era. So Era's main must-haves is Castellas and Super Surge. Castellas is really, really good because her main goal is to, like, she has a team buff. So why wouldn't you want it to last longer? Because you're buffing up like a lot of people, right? There's just no, and also her other ability like shrinks other people or makes other people big. So like, she just has so much value from Castellas. If you're not taking it, you're trolling. After that, Super Surge is pretty nice because again, she has movement abilities that affect a lot of people and it just makes it better. Like the main reason you're playing Era is to support your team, and these two really help you do that. As you guys can notice, all the other trainings that we have listed out here, crossover, stacks on stacks, extra special, they're not like super ways to buff your team. It's mainly self buff. So that's why they're not as important as Castellas and Super Surge. As a goalie, it's the same story, except you could take built different, but you rarely are going to be playing Era as a goalie, so there's not really too much to look too deeply into there. If you're ever playing off meta on any of these strikers, like just go ahead and take whatever you feel most comfortable with because it's not an explored space, so those are generally not as perfected trainings. But onto the next build, we have Estelle. So Estelle, I think her must-have is rapid fire, and the reason why is because her main goal is to just shoot people, and you want to have that ability up as often as possible, and rapid fire reduces the cooldown of that. And I mean, there's just not much more you could ask for right there. If you like scoring a lot with her movement ability, Super Surge is almost mandatory, and if you play Super Surge, I recommend never changing it because once you start using Super Surge, you can't go back because you're used to the longer range of the bigger jump. So there are a couple different ways to play Estelle. The next one we have is Stinger, and this is more of a poke Estelle build. It's really good just to whittle down a lot of the big beefy guys. So it's like two very distinct play styles. One's more for goal scoring, the other one's more for brawling with and against the enemy team. Ultra Scope's really good if you want to hit certain angles and like hit from further away. And Missile Propulsion, this is probably one of my favorites. This just gives you more value on your rapid fire. So most of the trainings you have here are built for complementing rapid fire. Prime Time, good for late game if you have a late game build. And then Hot Shot is pretty decent as well. It's just another projectile for Estelle. After that, you have Perfect Form and Crossover if you want to play more of like the ball handling play style rather than like the shooting person. Next, as a goalie, Estelle's actually not bad there because she has super long range. So the way I like playing her as goalie, I don't do it often, but if I had to, I would take all the long range abilities. So I'd be taking rapid fire, missile propulsion, and sometimes even ultra scope, but sometimes you want to take built different just because you're in the goal. It's nice to have that extra room. And then Prime Time is a great late game training. However, since I just mainly play her as forward, I would just focus on those up there. After that, we have Juliette. Juliette, I think her only mandatory one is Perfect Form right now, but there are a lot of different things you could choose. Crossover is good. Tempo Swing is pretty good. Tempo Swing's just more damage for her. Stacks on stacks if you can't get knocked out, though generally when you're picking Juliette, it's going to be a knockout heavy game, so it really depends on the matchups. Heavy-handed's pretty decent for more damage, and Prize Fighter, this is one of the newer ones. If you see a lot of easy targets on the enemy team, it's something that you can consider. Other playstyle dependent ones you could choose are Built Different and Unstoppable. These seem to work pretty well in the meta right now, but I feel like the other ones are more evergreen than those. For some niche builds, you could use Primetime or Adrenaline Rush. Adrenaline Rush is really fun because whenever you do get a takedown, and normally when you pick Juliette, you're aiming for takedowns, it's really easy to get goals after that because you just gain a big haste buff, and you could potentially knock out another person as well because you get a reset on your cooldowns. After that, as goalie, Juliette goalie's a little bit troll because, I mean, she's like full melee, right? She doesn't really have that many complementary abilities for your team, but she can beat up some people in there. I like having crossover and Built Different there, and then after that, it doesn't really matter too much. It really depends on your personal preferences. We like well-fed, stacks on stacks, and acrobatics. Onto the next build, we have Juno. Juno is very weird because she can fit in both goalie and forward. In fact, her goalie is really picking up a lot of popularity recently. But similar to Estelle, most of Juno's strength comes from her primary ability. So we're going to be doing Rapid Fire, again, to get more cooldown reduction on it, and then Creator of Durable Things just make your blobs much more imposing. Those are pretty much must-haves. Playstyle dependent is Creator of Large Things. That's my favorite one to take. Crossover, Unstoppable, Extra Special is really nice too, and Perfect Form. And then the niche ones you could use are Super Surge and Missile Propulsion. So Super Surge really fun is because you just jump across the map. It's like a really long range actually, and Missile Propulsion is really good if you want to play a little further back and not get too close to like your forward. So if you're playing like the mid to back position, Missile Propulsion is a great consideration because you don't have to go up front with your teammate. So if you're playing with like an X that just sits in the enemy goal, that's something that you can consider taking. As a goalie, I think you really just need Creator of Durable Things. After that, it's pretty playstyle dependent. Rapid Fire is good, again, just because it's just really good on Juno's kit. Extra Special is really nice because it really helps with those like really big goal scoring opportunities. Missile Propulsion is good because you're sitting in the back, so you want as much range as possible. And lastly, you could try Eject Button, though I don't really recommend that one. But some people like it, so it really depends on how you actually play in the goal. Next up, we have Kai. Kai is very flexible. He's good in both forward and goalie. And as a forward, I really like stacks on stacks on him because it's hard to actually knock him out because he's so fast. So if you ever get beat up by some bruiser, you're playing it wrong. You should just run away from them more and just like kick the ball away and then just run towards the ball, and they won't be able to catch up to you because Kai is a little too fast. After that, Rapid Fire is really good. Unstoppable's nice. Crossover is good if you want to make more fancy plays, and Castellas is decent because again, a lot of his strength is just from his movement speed. One niche training you could use is Ultra Scope, and that's just if you want to deal a bit more damage to knock people out. For goalie on Kai, the two mandatory must-haves are Perfect Form and Castellas. Castellas is pretty obvious. You rely a lot on your movement abilities as a Kai goalie compared to the big imposing goalies such as Atlas or Dubu. So just buffing up your movement as much as possible is just really nice on Kai. Perfect Form is really good because since you're in the back, you're going to be shooting your primary and ultimate abilities very often, and you're doing a lot for damage. So when you do that, you reduce the cooldown of your abilities a bunch, so it's just really useful whenever you're in the goal. For your third and last training, the one you choose really depends on what your team composition is and what the enemies is, along with what your own personal playstyle is. If you like doing the long range type of gameplay and controlling the ball before it even gets near your goal, Rapid Fire is going to be the way to go. If you like haste a lot, Crossover is pretty good. Built Different is just a good generic goalie training, and then stacks on stacks, obviously you only take that if you aren't going to get knocked out, so if they have no brawlers, that's the one to go. The two niche ones are a little weird. So first is Primetime. Primetime is really good if you know the game is going to go to late game. So after you see everyone pick their champions, you just predict if it's going to go for the long con, and then you swap to your Primetime page. For Super Surge, this one's a little weird. Again, it's going to be buffing up your movement ability much more. I believe this gives 50% haste, and if you are really one of those speedsters, that's going to be the choice for you. Honestly, for Kai, both forward and goalie, he could use all sorts of different things, so really just pick whatever your heart desires. Next up, we have Luna. Luna's really fun to play. I'd say in forward, it's pretty static what she takes. Heavy-handed, Ultra Scope, and Extra Special just give her the most damage. If you want to like replace Extra Special, you could do something like stacks on stacks, Primetime, or Stinger. Really, there are actually quite a few pages on Luna that you could use, but I feel like the one that just does the most damage, because that's really the only reason why you play Luna, because she's really slow, she doesn't really hit the ball very well, so you're really just playing her to just knock people out. I feel like this top combo just has the best mix of damage. But if you want to deviate, like if you're not going to get knocked out, stacks on stacks will eventually be better. Prime time is good for the late game, and Stinger is good if you're facing really beefy people that you just need to whittle down. Last but not least, you could also take eject button because it's really good if you're playing kind of like the supporting role in the back and just playing ball control. As a goalie, this is where Luna is a little more popular. Eject button is pretty much must have, though I have been seeing some metas where a lot of top Luna goalies are actually not taking it, but I don't recommend that if you're a beginner. So that's like kind of the difference between skill levels and play styles, because those players, they play a lot different for most of the people in playing Omega Strikers right now. After that, heavy-handed is pretty much a must-have because you need to hit hard with your heavy hits, because why else are you playing Luna? Then after that, you could take Ultra Scope or Rapid Fire or Missile Propulsion. Next up, we have Rune. Rune is a very high skill cap champion, and he's actually really fun to play. I have not actually played him yet because it looks a little too intimidating, but other people have been playing him, so I've been researching, asking them what works on him, and they really like Creator of Durable Things. They say that's a must-have for both forward and goalie, and then for the other ones, Crossover is nice, again, for any forward if you're trying to be a goal scorer, and that's definitely what he likes to do. Cast the Last is pretty decent on him, and then Extra Special, it depends which type of abilities you're valuing more in his kit, because his kit is very, very dynamic. Lastly, some people have recommended Rapid Fire, but it's definitely not as popular. As a goalie, Cast the Last, Extra Special, and Built Different, very similar reasons for the forward justifications. However, Built Different, again, it's just a really nice goalie training to have. Lastly, you could also do Hot Shot as goalie. It just gives you a little extra boost, just one more projectile just to kind of help him out a tiny bit. But I think Rune works a lot better at forward, so mainly focus on that. Last but not least, we have X. He is just a forward, so don't even try playing him as goalie. His must-have training for goaltending is not playing him as goalie. He's probably the only person on this list that really can't play the other position at all. Like the other ones, you could like kind of play it, but yeah, he's not offering you anything back there. His must-haves for forward is Unstoppable. After that, I personally like Cast the Last, but other people like hitting harder with heavy-handed and tempo swing, so it depends if you rely more on his ultimate or you rely more on hitting his primary and dash ability. Obviously, if you rely more on his ultimate, Cast the Last is going to be your pick, but if you're much better at hitting his primary ability, then do stuff like heavy-handed and tempo swing. Some of the more niche things you could do on X, it's a little weird, but Perfect Form can be used, Stinger if you're facing a lot of beefy dudes, Prime Time for the late game. And then Built Different is nice to have if you're doing ping pong battles, and same with Crossover. So a lot of different ways to play X. I personally like playing knockout style X, but there's some teams you just can't really knock out that easily compared to others. So in those cases, you'd probably pick something like Built Different, Crossover, things like that to try to be more of a goal scorer than like a in-your-face type of guy. But normally you would avoid picking X in those situations, and then you'd pick like a proper goal scorer such as like Estelle or Rune in those cases. But let's say you first picked X and then they pick a team that kind of countered you, then you could try doing these other trainings. But that's going to be the rundown for all these trainings. Hopefully this helped you guys a bunch. And if it did, go ahead and hit the like button so that this video can reach more people. And go tell your friends about it too, because I'm sure everyone has pulled over a friend. You're saying to them like, please try Omega Strikers with me. And maybe they're like lost a bit, don't know what trainings to take. So just take them there, osn.gg/trainings. And we're going to be updating these every single patch. So I really hope to see you guys in the future videos, and I'll see you all next time.